Welcome to Education Crossroads, the podcast that sits at the intersection of learning, policy, and our future.
All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a topic that's fundamental to education, sure, but it's also at the center of some really passionate debates.
I mean, it seems like it should be a simple question, doesn't it? But how we answer it, well, that's sparked what people are literally calling the reading wars. And look, if you're a parent, an educator, or really just anyone who cares about kids learning to read, this is a conversation you need to be in on.
And smack in the middle of this whole debate is one particular method. It's a method that's backed by, decades of research, but it's also surrounded by this huge storm of misinformation and some pretty powerful myths. So, okay, let's get into it.
What we're talking about, of course, is phonics. And before we get any deeper, let's just make sure we're all on the same page. Phonics, at its core, is just about teaching the relationship between the letters you see and the sounds they make. You can think of it like it's about cracking the code of written language.
All right, so first up, let's tackle some of the biggest myths you hear about the method itself, like how it's actually taught.
Okay, so here's myth number one, the big one, that phonics is just drill and kill. These boring, repetitive exercises that just suck the life out of reading for a kid, but honestly, the evidence shows that's a total misrepresentation. When it's done right, phonics is super dynamic, it's interactive, it can even be fun. Those drills, they're not punishment. They're about building a skill until it's automatic, making decoding feel like second nature.
So what does that even look like, engaging phonics? Well, think about learning that uses all the senses. We're talking about kids tracing letters in sand, or even shaving cream, playing phonics card games, going on scavenger hunts for things that start with a certain sound. It's all about active, hands-on learning, not just sitting silently at a desk.
Okay, here's another huge one you hear all the time, that you have to choose. It's either phonics or it's real, wonderful books. But that's just a classic false choice, right? The whole point of phonics isn't to get rid of amazing stories. The point is to give kids the actual tools they need to unlock those stories for themselves.
And check this out. Here's why it's so important for reading those real books. A staggering 87% of English words are decodable, or at least partially decodable. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. Phonics isn't some weird niche thing. It's basically the master key that unlocks almost the entire language. That's what paves the way for a lifelong love of reading.
All right, the next myths we need to talk about, well, they're the most serious ones. These are the ones that deal with accusations of cultural bias and even racism.
So there's this claim out there that phonics is this blunt, one-size-fits-all tool that just steamrolls over cultural diversity, especially for kids who are English language learners. But the research actually points in the complete opposite direction. Because it's so systematic, phonics gives a really clear, really essential foundation for every student. The key isn't to get rid of it, it's to make it even better by linking it to a student's home language and using books that actually reflect their culture.
And hey, this isn't just some theory, it's backed by official groups. You've got the Colorado Department of Education, for example, saying flat out that the research on reading has looked at all kinds of students, English language learners, multilingual kids, you name it. And the conclusion is always the same. A solid foundation in core reading skills, including phonics, helps everybody.
And that brings us to what is, without a doubt, the most charged myth of all, that supporting phonics is racist. Now, according to the sources we're looking at, this claim isn't just considered baseless, it's actually contradicted by some of the very groups it's supposed to be harming, like Black activists and major civil rights organizations.
Yeah, and this isn't just some abstract debate. This is happening in the real world. I mean, look at this headline from the Washington Post. You have Black activists actively pushing for more phonics in schools. Why? Because they see it as a crucial tool for justice, for closing that nearly 20% reading gap between Black and white students. They're championing it as a path to equity.
Okay, for this last section, let's kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture, at the myths that attack the whole system, the science itself, and whether this can even work at scale.
So, you've probably heard of this other approach called balanced literacy. And the myth is that it's this superior, more well-rounded way to teach reading. But the evidence, and we're talking about big studies like the one from the National Reading Panel, points to a really critical flaw.
These balanced literacy programs, they often don't have a strong systematic phonics piece. They might even encourage kids to do things like guess a word based on the picture, which sounds good, but can actually get in the way of them learning how to properly decode. So, if the evidence is pointing away from balanced literacy, why does this matter so much? Well, check out this survey from EdWeek in 2020. It found this huge disconnect. 68% of early grade teachers said they preferred balanced literacy. So the very method that the science says is less effective is the one being used in the majority of our classrooms. That's a big deal.
Okay, another system-level myth, that the science behind phonics is just old and simplistic, that it's based on outdated ideas. But that's really a misunderstanding of where this comes from. The research isn't about old-school behaviorism. It's grounded in modern cognitive science, in how our brains are literally wired to learn how to read.
And you know that science isn't just sitting still. It's always evolving. It started with something called the simple view of reading way back in the 80s, and it's progressed to the much more detailed, active view of reading that we see today. Our understanding just keeps getting better and more nuanced. But you know what the one constant has been through all of it? Every step of the way, the fundamental importance of systematic phonics gets confirmed, over and over again.
So, we've waded through all the noise, we've busted a few myths. What does the evidence actually tell us is the path forward?
Well, the conclusion from all this evidence is pretty darn clear. Phonics isn't just, one choice on a menu of options. The evidence says it is a proven, inclusive, and absolutely critical tool. A tool for literacy equity, for making sure every single kid gets a fair shot. So, if you take away one thing, let it be this. The myths, they try to paint phonics as this boring, outdated, even harmful thing. But the evidence, it tells a completely different story. It's a proven method, and it can be fun and engaging. It's a powerful tool for creating a more equitable system. And no, it doesn't kill the love of reading. It's what gives kids the key to open the door in the first place. And all of this really leaves us with one last really important question to chew on. If the science is so clear, if we have decades of research and real-world evidence all pointing in the same direction, what's stopping us? What's really standing in the way of making sure every child gets access to this? That's something for all of us to think about. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.